Hello and welcome to the Daily Bible Podcast. My name is William Hemsworth. Thank you all for joining me on this journey through Scripture. Well, today we're continuing on in Matthew chapter 5, and we're going to take a look at Matthew chapter 5, verses 17 and 18. Now, sometimes these verses pose a little bit of problem when they're not looked at in their context, so to speak. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to look at verses 17 and 18, and we'll briefly go over what that context is, because these verses make perfect sense in light of verses 17 through 37. But we're not going to go over all those verses today. We're going to take it step by step, just like we've been doing. So Matthew chapter 5, verses 17 and 18 say, "Do not think that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets. I have come not to abolish, but to fulfill. For truly I tell you, until heaven and earth pass away, not one letter, not one stroke of a letter will pass from the law until all is accomplished." So just a couple things. When Jesus says the law and the prophets, he's alluding to the Old Testament. Those are two sections of the Old Testament, and the Psalms can be included in there. The law is the first 5 books of the Bible. Prophets would be like, Isaiah, Jeremiah, those different books, those Old Testament books. So Jesus has not come to abolish, but to fulfill. Here Jesus is kind of telling the religious leaders of the day, look, I'm not against what the law says. I'm here to fulfill it. I'm here to fulfill. Okay. We see this later on in Matthew chapter 5, where, with the command, "Thou shalt not kill." Well, Jesus takes it a step further. It says, if you even call your brother a fool in anger, you're guilty of murder. So Jesus is fulfilling it. He's calling us to a higher standard, if you will. Okay, so the Greek word translated fulfill means to make complete. And this kind of goes with the New Testament. The New Testament includes and concludes the Old Covenant, but it perfects and transforms it. Okay? And while sacrificial laws of the Old Testament expire with the sacrifice of Jesus, the moral law, such as the 10 Commandments, are retained. That's why Jesus says, even if you look at a woman lustfully, have lust in your heart, you're guilty of adultery. He takes those moral laws a step further. He takes those moral laws just a step further. So I think that's very important to understand. It doesn't mean as Christians we get to live, reckless lives or anything like that. So just a couple more thoughts on this verse. Okay, so we've already talked about Jesus is not coming to alter or replace or to nullify former commands, but he establishes their true intent and purpose. And his teaching and his life accomplishes that. Because the law and the prophets that he's referencing ultimately point to Christ himself. So I hope that helps sheds a little bit of light on these verses. Of course, in the bigger context, like I said before, for the fulfillment of the law, we have to look at verses 17 through 37, I believe it is. So there's we're going to be going over a lot of stuff over the next week and a half or so. But this is just a foretaste of it. All right. So God bless you guys. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Daily Bible Podcast. I hope you've enjoyed it. As always, if you enjoy it, please rate it, please share it. Thank you very much for your support. God bless you guys. Have a great day.